Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a video on the beloved E46. Today we are going to do a buyer's guide for the BMW E46. I've had my E46 now for about 6 or 7 years. I know most of the things to look for. I have made some other videos, but I'm actually going to change that a little bit from all the experience that I've gained from owning this car and doing many things and just taking apart and seeing what's broken on these cars. But before we jump into the video, give this video a huge thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Check out all of our links down below, including our website, EM Performance, for all of your coating and retrofit needs. All right, we're going to start with number 5 and work our way to number 1. Number 5, I would have to say, is the subframe. It's not as big of a deal as people mention on these cars. I have an E46 330. I've not done the subframe. I've had it inspected. Nothing's wrong with it. I would say if you have a 325, 328, or 330, get it inspected, but I wouldn't do it just for preventative maintenance unless you are going to be tuning or adding a turbo or a higher horsepower application like that. However, especially if you have an older model year E46 M3, I would definitely have the subframe reinforcements done. But something like this, I have a 2002 BMW 330 Ci, never had the subframe done. It's been inspected. It's not cracked. It doesn't look like it's going to crack. So I'm not saying it's just a myth. I'm saying don't go out and shell the money on a very expensive repair if you don't actually need it. There's a lot of urban legends or myths or he said, she said on these cars. So just get it inspected. Go to a reputable mechanic. My person that I bring it to is Jake at Wild Motorsports. He looks at all my cars. He'll be happy to look for your car. He'll be happy to look over your car if you're in Massachusetts. But like I said, it's really not needed on the 325, 328, 330. So really the higher horsepower applications of the E46 chassis. Number 4 has to be the suspension on the BMW E46. If you haven't driven a BMW E46, go out there and test drive one and you'll realize how well these cars drive when the suspension has been replaced or upgraded. The suspension on these cars are very complex, and with the complexity, wear happens. And that's due to the reason why these cars drive so good is because of the overcomplicated suspension, as many people say. So some of the things to look out for when buying an E46 is the control arms. The control arms usually wear. You get play, you can actually jack up the car and shake the wheel and you can feel that. So control arms, overall struts on these cars. After these things have about 100,000 miles on it, the struts need to be replaced, and I highly recommend upgrading them to like a Bilstein B6 or Koni Racing. I think it's Koni Actives are pretty good. It's actually what I might replace on this car with. However, these are things that need to be replaced if you get one. Just budget that in. I doubt one that you will find will have all this stuff replaced. Other things that need to be replaced are the rear trailing arm bushings and the guibo. The guibo can contribute to a lot of vibration. You'll be driving down the highway. You'll think you have a bent rim. Turns out it could be your guibo. So keeping the suspension in a working condition and making sure everything's been refreshed is super important when buying an E46. You can try to find one that has it done, but I recommend just redoing it yourself. So put some money aside if you're going to do it. It's not terribly difficult to replace any of the suspension on an E46. You can do it yourself, but something to look out for. Number 3 has to be the electronics in the BMW E46. The E46 was way ahead of its time when it came to electronics. This car could have things like park distance control, xenon headlights, heated seats, automatic headlights, fog lights, even navigation and power folding mirrors. And with all of these things that have been incorporated into this car from the factories, naturally they're going to have electronical or module issues, and that is something you need to look out for. I recommend getting a good scanner like IMPA or ISTA. Unfortunately, Pro Tools does not yet support this car, but it will, and I recommend scanning it for codes. Some of the codes may just be informational codes, so you have to watch out for that, but like one of the biggest problems with the E46 in terms of electronics is the general module 5. It's pretty easy to replace, and I will come out with a video very soon on how to replace it because mine's actually bad in my car. So one thing to note, when I lock my car, it's been locked. In 2 seconds, the alarm's going to go off. So this time, locking my car worked, but sometimes I'll lock my car. It makes a weird sound and that's the normal sound when I unlock it, and my alarm goes off instantly. On top of that, my interior lights aren't working, so it's really a big problem with the BMW E46. Right now, I think if I open up my door, the lights are working, but it's inconsistent. So that's something to look out for, is the General Module 5. You can get a new one or you can get it repaired. It's really not that expensive, but something to look out for. Other things that can happen, your door may not register that it's being open, so that's another electronic problem. In terms of the cluster and the radio and stuff like that, that's pretty soundproof, but really some of the electronics that don't work well, it's usually something like the amp, it's usually the GM5, it can be your keys, it can be stuff like that. Sometimes fog lights, headlights, due to wiring issues and other electronic modules, because even your headlights, believe it or not, the xenon headlights have their own modules. So taking a look at all the electronics, making sure all the electronics work, pushing all the buttons, making sure that the mirrors go up and down so there's no motor issue, making sure that the sunroof works. The sunroof is notorious for having electronic and hardware issues, so I thought I'd throw that in, but these are all things to take a look at. All right, moving on to number 2. We're going to be talking about the engine, and specifically something BMWs are known for. We're going to be talking about oil leaks. On the BMW E46, there's a few spots that can leak oil. Most of these can be repaired at your house if you're somewhat mechanically inclined. First one is going to be over here, is the valve cover gasket. It's actually very easy to see if it's leaking. Usually oil puddles up around here. And even in the back, there's a little tray. There's a little drip tray that will hold oil. It's like right down there. So that is one thing to look out for. It's very visually easy to inspect. The next thing is the oil filter housing gasket. Right here is the oil filter housing, and behind it and kind of down here is the gasket. The gasket ends up going bad. It becomes very brittle and you need to replace it. If you don't, oil can drip onto the belts and can suck your belt in. It's pretty dangerous. If you're lucky, you catch it before, but still something to look out for. The last big oil leak that we see on the E46s, and something that needs to be done on my E46, is the oil pan gasket. The oil pan gasket sits at the bottom of the engine, and right now it is leaking. It is notorious for leaking on all BMWs with higher mileage. So you will most likely need to replace that if you buy a BMW E46. Regardless of the motor that you get, you will most likely need to do that. Sometimes the rear main seal can be leaking as well. Usually when people do either the transmission or the oil pan, they'll end up doing that as well. There's a few things that are specific to the E46 M3 that also need to be taken care of in the engine bay. It's the vanos. Those usually need to be rebuilt. You can ask your previous owner if they've been rebuilt. And the other thing that needs to be done is the rod bearings. The rod bearings wear prematurely on the E46 M3. So that's a pretty intense job. I would make sure that those are done before buying it, because you will be shelling out a big bill. I know, as I mentioned, Jake Weil will be happy to service that on your car if you live in the Massachusetts area, but it's still a big ticket item. And a lot of people like to do it for peace of mind, because you could one day blow your motor, be on the track or driving around in your nice E46 M3 and pop the motor. So something to look at if you're planning on buying an E46 M3 specifically. All right, moving on to number 1 and the biggest and most expensive fix that you could encounter on the E46, and something I've personally had to deal with. It's costing me thousands and thousands of dollars. Many other people have this issue as well. I would steer clear from any E46 that you see with this problem, no matter if it's a good deal or not, whether it's an E46 M3, 330, a wagon, whatever E46, they all have this issue, and that is rust. If you come over here closer, there's rust on my car forming. I've already had this repaired, and this is the second time. The quarter panel is rusting from within. This car is notorious for having rusty arches right here. I also have rust going on right here that I put tape on it. That this has already been repaired once too, and it needs to be repaired again. The other thing to look out for is the jack points under here. You won't be able to see it, but where you jack up the car, it will form rust. And this can be the most expensive fix that you will ever have on an E46. You may find a cheap E46 and you go look at it and say, oh, it's just a little rust. I promise you there is more rust hiding somewhere else in the car, and it will be tens of thousands of dollars to have it fixed correctly. So if you think you're finding a good deal on an E46 that has rust, stay the hell away. This is a personal experience of mine. Unfortunately, as many of you guys know, this is my father's car. I'm not selling it. I will be fixing every bit of rust that I can afford to fix on it, but there's rust here, there's rust in the back. The whole side of the jack point on my other side is rusted and will have to be repaired. Now, if you live in a place like California or somewhere where it doesn't snow, you probably don't have these issues, but still something to take a look at. These cars have been transported all around the United States and even in Europe, same thing, have been tossed around everywhere. So checking for rust is number one. That's why we put it at the last. We wanted you guys to stay through the whole video, but this is the most crucial thing that I've experienced on my E46 and is going to be the most costly thing to fix if you are looking to buy an E46 and you overlook it like I did when I was young and I just didn't know that much. I looked at this car sight unseen. My dad just kind of said send it, and yeah, I'm paying the price now. Alright everyone, to sum up this video, 5 things that you need to look out for when buying an E46 in 2023. Number 5, subframe. Number 4, suspension. Number 3, electronics. Number 2, oil leaks. And number 1, and the most important thing to look at when buying an E46 is rust. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. We will be coming back with more E46 content. Matt's really pushing me to get this Evo installed in the car. He's helping make a custom bracket. So the Evo video, hopefully the first one, will be out soon. Give this video a huge thumbs up. Consider subscribing. Check out all of our links down below. And be sure to give us more suggestions of what you guys want to see. We want to hear it from you. And yeah, we want to continue the channel and bring back the E46 as well as mix in some new cars. Matt has an F83 and I have an F10, and hopefully I'll be getting another one soon, so we'll be mixing that in as well. Thank you guys so much.